Quarter to 12, okay. Okay, if we have the roll call, please.
Barry.
Here.
Brooks.
Frizzalone. Harris.
Here.
Markham. Mustis. Ogalla.
Here.
Trainier. Van Dyne.
Here.
And Winfrey, you have a quorum. Thank you. Mr. Markham, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Okay, we have the minutes from the town hall on October 2nd.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Minutes from the town hall on October 7th.
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Committee of the Whole, October 10th.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Town Hall on October 29th.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And the Town Hall on October 30th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're going to the old business. We're going to shift these around a little bit. We're going to bring the TA up first. Where? Oh, there you are. JD, you come on up, we'll do that. Hi. And introduce your guest, JD.
Good morning, Madam Speaker and members of the board. We're here to present the RTA budget for this year, and with me is our Executive Director, Leanne Redden, and she'll do the presentation, and we'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here today. I know you're running a little bit behind schedule, so I will try to be brief. But I think, as all of you know, the public transportation is really important to our entire region's prosperity. As the transit system, the three operators, CTA, Metro, and Pace, provide 2 million rides each day. So as I like to say, even if you never get on a bus or train, you should be grateful for the public transportation system, because that's one less car in front of you on the highway. So, but it's a very important system in terms of getting people to work, to school, to other appointments, and just general ability to get around and access the great things in our region, as well as really a driver for the economy. This year is a kind of a momentous time with our regional budget. I think, as many of you already know, that, and you've already heard specifically from Metro and Pace the more details of their budgets. So I'm going to focus on the regional perspective and the broader regional picture that we're required to share with you today. So at your place settings, each of you have a summary document that rolls up the regional budgets and encapsulates CTA, Metro, and Pace's budgets as a whole, as well as the RTA. I think the key thing that I want to focus on is, I think everyone's aware that the state legislature passed a momentum and very significant capital bill this past June and was signed into law by Governor Pritzker. The new state funding basically doubles the amount of capital funding we have for our region in the transit system. So it is truly a significant and momentous budget year for us looking forward. The 5-year capital program that we're proposing for 2020 through 2024 is $8.3 billion, and that's a great thing for us to say. But our annual capital funding for 2020 alone is going to be $2.12 billion. Our overall operating expenses are increasing just over 1% for a total of $3 billion. So with the advent and the passing of Rebuild Illinois, it really provides the region's transit system $2.6 billion over the next 5 years in a combination of new bonding through the state of Illinois, as well as an estimated $227 million on an annual basis in what we're calling PAYGO funding. So that's going to be a regular, dedicated source of funding stream coming to the transit system. That's really a game changer for us in terms of our ability to program, plan, and some predictability of that funding. where the service boards, I think, are doing a great job in focusing their initial improvements on very much bringing the transit system back into a state of good repair and sort of trying to catch up on some of that backlog of deferred maintenance that we've had that has built up over the previous 10 years plus, where we've had no state infusion of dollars. The $30 billion, though, this amount of money, even though significant, falls short. We have a $30 billion estimated need over the next 10 years. And so what I like to say with myself and our transit colleagues is that we're actually playing a long game here. So even though the state has passed this 5-year program, we're looking at this as really the first in a step of a series of ongoing commitment dedicated to capital funding to really help us maintain and stabilize the transit system that we've already invested billions of dollars into over the last 30-plus years. The service boards have done a great job, I think, on really focusing their investments into rider-facing improvements, especially in the short term. There you're seeing improvements and purchases of rail cars, locomotives, buses, and then they're going to move on to some of the bigger capital and some of the sort of invisible stuff, bridges, tunnels, signal switches, those kinds of things that are less sort of sexy and sort of customer-facing, but are actually as mission-critical to providing reliability and of the entire system. The service boards did adopt with us a couple of years back our strategic plan, and I know I spoke with you about this last year, but that really became the guiding piece with the priority projects that we all identified as guiding what we're going to be investing our dollars in going forward. But beyond that, we've also been utilizing a very robust capital asset inventory that we have completed, the 4 agencies have completed over the previous several years to guide our work with 5 key principles that we've adopted. And I think it's important to just highlight some of those because our capital program, while I'm required to come here each year and talk to you a little bit about the regional program, this is our opportunity to share with you, sort of put sunlight and some transparency on how we're actually making decisions as to where those dollars go, because it is very important to not just be protecting the assets that we have and focusing on the transit riding public, but to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars. So additionally, we're looking at guiding our investments by working, as I mentioned, towards drawing down or catching up on the backlog of assets that we need to invest in. We need to focus on completing projects in a timely manner, making sure that we are delivering those projects and spending down those state dollars, those taxpayer dollars. We need to provide funding certainty for the service boards as well, so they can really help them make some near-term funding decisions and actually advance complex capital projects. We're also, though, in the longer term, not locking everything down into historic formulas and funding flows, and allowing that there is, I think, long-term adaptability and really the ability to shift funding priorities should needs and capabilities change. As you know, Metro's got some big projects on the horizon, and does that mean an opportunity when they're ready to go that CTA sits aside a little bit in some of that funding and more money is invested into Metro? This is the first time that the state didn't actually dictate by percentages where all these dollars go. So it is kind of a momentous time, and I think we have negotiated in this first round a really good way of moving away from some of those traditional percentages and basing our investments, their investments, on the needs of each project and each agency. Translating some of this into operations and capitals also is something that we're required to sort of share with you on a regular basis. I do have to talk a little bit about the CTA. So in their 5-year capital program is going to total about $5 billion in a combination of federal and state dollars. The CTA will focus also on state of good repair and projects that improve reliability of their service to customers and just an all-round better transit experience. They're going to be mostly investing in the most immediate years on, as I mentioned, buses and trains, but also line improvements and other bus service improvements, some express bus services in the downtown and some bus lanes, as well as station improvements. You heard from Metro and Pace, so I won't get into a lot of detail on their specific programs, but Metro's 5-year capital program is going to be about $2.5 billion. And about $1.5 billion of that is coming directly from Rebuild Illinois. They're focusing on older rail car, locomotive purchases, as well as working towards a state of good repair and making a more reliable transit experience for their riders. They will also be making some investment in stations, parking lots, and track and structure renewal across their entire system. PACE, as including not just their fixed route system, but their ADA paratransit service, their 5-year capital program is going to total about $568 million. That is, more than half of that is provided from Rebuild Illinois. They will be investing in vehicles as well as some garage improvements that will help them provide better reliability in terms of the services that they provide, as well as including significant purchases on ADA paratransit vehicles, some investment in new technology, and some new stations across the line. On the operating side of the budget, because I do have to touch base briefly on that, the RTA and the service boards again have developed a comprehensive balanced operating budget for 2020, totaling $3.1 billion. The service boards have exhibited a responsible expense growth with no fare increases anticipated for next year. CTA and Metra expect to maintain existing service levels, while PACE is looking at some possibility of some service adjustments on some of their poor-performing routes, but then reorienting and refocusing those resources to better serve where the demand is and where the opportunities exist. Just one point on the pay-as-you-go funding that the state will be providing. The service boards, as I mentioned and asked, will be looking to use the strategic plan and the principles I talked about guiding those future funding allocations. But we're also working towards an increasingly collaborative and transparent budget process. We've all agreed beyond this budget year we're coming together to actually even enhance how we do that project allocation and provide more sunshine, more transparency as to where those dollars are going. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. I want to personally thank J.D. Ross, who is a great asset to our board, a great counsel to me in the work that I have to do. But I do think it's important that we come to you each year. It is an opportunity for you to hear from us, but also answer any questions that you may have. So thank you.
Thank you, Lee, and appreciate that update. Are there any questions for her? Jackie?
Yeah, questions, comments. One, glad to hear that you now have the ability to assign where the funding goes rather than the state legislature. I think you're probably a lot closer to the need than they are. And they tend to have constituents pushing them perhaps, and you're looking at the overall picture, so that's good. Driving with the bus lanes downtown is really challenging. Are there going to be more of those?
Well, not so much in the downtown loop area. They've
Okay.
pretty much decided what they're doing in the downtown loop, but there is, both CTA and PACE are looking at, I think you're probably familiar with the I-55 bus on Shoulder.
Yes.
PACE replicated that on I-90 when the tollway rebuilt the Jane Addams, which is a great partnership in leveraging other people's resources in a way to provide transit benefits. The CTA is looking at expanding and enhancing some of their express services on some of their arterials in sort of out of the downtown area to provide better services, faster service, more reliable service.
Yeah, because it really ties up traffic downtown. You have to end up going around 2 or 3 extra blocks to get where you're going because you can't make that turn in front of or through the bus lane. Another quick comment and a question. The comment that you made at the very beginning about being grateful for public transportation because otherwise there'd be more cars in front of you, that should be on every bus, every train, every billboard you can find, because people just don't get it. We need a much more vibrant public transportation system so that we can get some of these cars off the road because enough said about that. But my question, I read something this morning in the paper about some big kerfluffle that happened at Union Station, and, of course, Amtrak, I guess, is in charge of Union Station, and there was talk about giving that over to Metra. Do you know anything about that? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, I know quite a bit. It's a much longer conversation.
Okay.
Yes, you're correct. Amtrak does control Union Station, but Metra is the largest tenant and
Right.
operates the lion's share of the service in and out there. So many times, if there is a service delay on the BNSF, a switching issue, it's not a Metra issue, it's actually an Amtrak issue. Some of it's communication and making sure people kind of, again, understand sort of the need to invest in that infrastructure. There has been talk about Metra taking over that space. Metra and Amtrak are in negotiations on their lease. That's a complex and challenging conversation, as I understand it, because you're not just dealing with sort of, Amtrak's a federal quasi-federal agency also based in Philadelphia. So there's a lot of complex conversations and negotiations. I can say, though, that on the sort of some of the day-to-day stuff, they're in a pretty good place in how they work together, work through these issues, and actually negotiate some of these smaller projects of upgrading and capital improvements in and around the station area. We at the RTA stay involved in that because it is, if there is a regional example of, public transportation in the city of Chicago, Union Station is it, and we've actually taken a strong position of supporting investment into that project as well, because it's, hundreds of thousands of suburban commuters come in and out of there on a daily basis. More people come in and out of Union Station on a daily basis than Midway Airport.
Right.
People don't understand the impact of that station. And you have one little thing, and especially if it happens, at 4:30 in the afternoon, it just has this snowball effect on the rest of the daily commute. So we have a lot of old infrastructure. We've been talking about this for years, and Amtrak is sort of in much of the same boat that we are. So the need to invest some of this capital money, I can tell you, is going to be going towards some of these projects in and around Union Station. And more specifically, some of this PAYGO funding gives us the opportunity to have this ongoing revenue stream that we can even go leverage further federal dollars and bring them to the table. That's been part of our challenge, too, in the more immediate term, is we haven't been able to go to the federal government sometimes and get money because we had no ability to match it. And you always have to have a match and an increasing match when you're dealing with federal dollars. And so now that stability and predictability of those dollars, both on the state bonding side and the pay-as-you-go side, gives us that ability to go be more competitive nationally for dollars. So we're not giving all our money to, all the monies that could be coming to Illinois aren't going to California or the East Coast and things like that.
And last question, really quick. Do you manage Ogilvy Station? Or is that also Amtrak?
No, that's not Amtrak. Amtrak provides no service. So that is Metra's
That is
station.
Metra.
So as a result, you actually see better control of
Yeah.
the services in and out of those facilities. And same thing with the LaSalle Street station. It's Metra's to control. So it's an ongoing contract negotiation for
Thank you.
Union Station.
Ray?
Thank you.
I see
I
you, Jim.
agree with Member Trenier regarding the, we need more good options for public transportation. But when I look in there, and I understand you have a balanced budget, and I'm happy to see that expenses are up about 1.5%, 1.3%. However, the thing that always alarms me, and I brought this up with Metra, and it's kind of like a broken record, but when you see, this year's ridership expected to be down about 2.5% from last year. Next year, you're already budgeting down another 1.5%, 2% from that year. That trajectory with increasing costs obviously is not a good thing. I'm just curious what we're doing to try to increase ridership, and if there's something that's really precipitating the decline in those numbers.
You're correct. Ridership is declining. It's a national phenomenon. Some people have attributed it to sort of the Ubers and Lyfts of the world. I think that's a small piece of it, and it might be a smaller piece in some of the downtown urban core area. It's less of an issue across the broader region. What is really driving the ridership, so if you actually unpack some of Metro's ridership in the peak hours, and actually across all the transit system, in the peak hours their ridership is actually increasing. Okay. It's the off-peak, and it's sort of we're having sort of a fundamental shift, I think, in the way people are living, working, and moving around the region. And largely, a lot of it's being driven by technology, flexible work schedules. Just for me, well, I am going downtown after this, but, if I was not have to be downtown today, I would go and work at home. I can do as much work remotely, and I think we can all anecdotally talk. We know people that might work downtown or
Sure.
work anywhere, and they can work anywhere now. So that's fundamentally really changing. We're actually waiting on some new regional survey data to actually get us some better numbers on what that really, really looks like. But it's a combination of factors. I think what we need to be doing, and our strategic plan starts to tackle some of this, is a sort of a new normal. The dynamic is changing. So where is our focus? We should be focusing on sort of the markets and the opportunities where we serve a market effectively. And I don't want to say give up on areas, because we've also got this sort of broader public policy balance that we want to provide,
Right.
accessibility across an entire region. And that's where PACE, has probably one of the more challenging environments. There's sort of a policy choice to provide certain levels of access and service, but it may not be as financially productive, if you will. So it's sort of a little bit of that balance. I think in the public realm, we'll always probably have some of those kinds of services out there. Certainly, we have to provide ADA paratransit services. But, you know, we've had conversations with the 3 service boards. We meet informally every other month to just kind of almost brainstorm. Where are some areas where we can tweak and play? That's how some of the expansion on the bus on shoulder. You know, does Metro sort of think about sort of over the long term pulling back some of the services in the off peaks and focusing, you know, enhancement and expansions in the peaks as an example. They're tough policy conversations because people never want to give up service,
Right.
but I think that we're seeing some evolution in sort of the transportation ecosystem, if you will, on how we'll play. And I do think there's a role for the Ubers and Lyfts, even in a suburban environment, to provide sort of that connectivity, that first and last mile. You could take a Metro train, you know, but you don't, you know, even on a reverse commute, for example, you can't necessarily then get from that train station to the office building or where you locate. And we've got some pilots, actually, we're demoing around the region right now where we're actually funding those last mile connections to see if that's an opportunity that can provide a lot cheaper service than running a bus with a round trip cost of, $40 a head. If I can subsidize a $7 trip, that's a lot cheaper for the region. So
Thank you.
we're looking at some of those things.
Jim?
Thank you for coming. Judy.
You're welcome.
Nice seeing you. You know, my interest pretty much has always been more local transportation, which is a real challenge, as we all know. It's not only that first and last mile, it's basically how do you get move people locally, especially those who don't have a real alternative to public transportation, outside of public transportation. Our senior community, our community of folks that have disabilities, and so forth. And here in Will County, we've been fortunate enough to try to start a program through a grant from the RTA that enables us to try to get some of that connectivity
Yep.
with folks. So first, I'd like to say, can we have a bigger grant? Because I think we're getting a lot of bang for
It's
our
always money, right?
I think we're getting a lot of bang for our buck here, and if you haven't reviewed what we're doing.
Yeah, no,
You know,
Wendy and I just spent the last
okay.
hour chatting too, so.
So,
Very familiar.
you know, the opportunities there may be under this budget of maybe some additional grants or some larger grants, and hopefully the grants will continue. It's always a little shaky when we're on grants,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because the program would collapse without it. So, and we've even talked about perhaps some more of our local dollars, county dollars, going into the program. So I guess this is just me saying, you know, it's a problem that I've tried to work on for over 30 years. I don't know if we've made much progress, but we keep trying. So,
Well, and I think the point I was making about the Uber Lyft, yes, I said
Yeah.
the first and last mile, but I think the rideshare companies, the TNC companies, there is opportunity, I think, for
agree.
better partnership. Now, we've kind of got, if we're using any federal dollars, you've got sort of, well, any public dollars, you've got drug and alcohol, you know, they're not, the Uber and Lyft drivers aren't regulated in the same way that a public transit driver, and there's a certain expectation of sort of carrier responsibility. But we're working both at the federal level and even locally to try to work through some of that regulatory side of things, but also working with PACE and sort of funding. We just actually signed an intergovernmental agreement working with PACE to do a bit more in the demo space that's not just first and last mile, but to kind of find opportunities to sort of create a sandbox, if you will, where we can play and try some of this demand responsive, make a call. You know, it's not even about just the flexibility, it's about the ease of finding that ride. And, you know, we've all got, probably all of us have an Uber or a Lyft app on our phones now, you know, regardless of your age. I mean, my mother's in her 80s and she uses Uber, you know, and she doesn't like it that much. But, you know, so I think that there's opportunities for us to sort of think, you know, push the boundaries a little bit, and that's sort of one of the roles I see for the RTA to continue to do, is sort of push the service boards maybe a little bit out of their comfort zone too, and what can we do in terms of funding some of these demos and pilots to let them try stuff with a lot less risk and see if it works, and then if it works, then can we replicate that more broadly across the region?
Think of Will County when you think about some of these
I will.
pilot programs. Thank you.
You know, I might add, one thing that you don't think about in the Collier counties maybe is that a lot of our bus riders in Will County are doing it out of necessity. So the whole market of convenience rides, in a sense, is open, and the only place where that's really working right now is bus on shoulder, because there are a lot of people who take that could drive or could take Metra, but they take it as a matter of convenience. That whole market is open to us, but it's just difficult to figure out how to attract that market. And all of you who live in the county, you know people who take the bus, and 99% of them are not taking it as a matter of convenience. They're taking it because it's their only option.
Right. Gloria?
Yes, I just have one question about the sustainable revenue source referred to as PAYGO. Have you mentioned it a couple times? Can you just briefly explain what that is?
So this is the first time, well, as I think everybody knows, the state raised the gas tax. A portion of that gas tax is actually now coming on as a dedicated revenue stream to the transit system. So we anticipate that about 220, because it fluctuates, it's based on what the tax revenue the state receives, but we're anticipating that'll be around the $227 million on an annual basis coming to us. What is sort of the game changer on this is it's sort of a regular, in theory, monthly, or maybe they'll give it to us quarterly. IDOT hasn't quite decided how they're going to flow it yet. But it's the first time that there's monies coming, one, out of the gas tax, so that there's a great nexus between sort of taxing the citizens of the region, but then providing it for another transportation service beyond the bridges and the roads, which we also love because we use the bridges and roads as well. But it's, and it goes beyond the 5-year program. I think anyone who's been around Illinois for long enough knows we say we pass 5-year capital programs, and then they turn into 10-year plus programs. There's sort of these, and that's a really challenging space to sort of plan big capital projects, especially if you're trying to leverage federal dollars, for example, and make our money go further, because if you don't have that reliable source to even bond against or something like that, you don't have that revenue stream. So even though it's only, and I shouldn't say only, it's $227 million expected over the course of, in perpetuity, basically. It really is, from a sort of a planning and programming standpoint, a game changer for us in the transit space. So we're very excited about that.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you both very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Okay, so then we're going up to the left. Okay. So now we'll step back to old business on the letter of support for the 12-year extension for the TIF. Last month, we voted that in, but we did not have the corresponding resolution. So, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then we have the discussion of the ban of sales of recreational marijuana in unincorporated Will County. And we have a number of people signed up in the public speaking space. So let's give them a chance first. First up, we have Marilyn Gallagher. If you would come down to the podium.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. We have just completed a successful campaign to convince the trustees in New Lenox to opt out of selling recreational marijuana within the village. And now our concern turns to the sale of marijuana in unincorporated Will County, which surrounds our community. We did just get the good news that apparently some dates have been set for public hearings and public comment and vote by Will County in terms of this issue. So we're very happy about that. If we allow retail sales of marijuana, we are sending a message to our kids and youth that using marijuana is a normal, everyday activity instead of the dangerous drug that it really is. I did have one handout that I know has been scanned and will be sent in to you internally. That outlines some of these very up-to-date 2019 facts. Even in liberal California, 80% of communities have opted out of selling marijuana. We should not focus on the dubious claims of tax benefits. Remember the lottery money that was supposed to go to schools? Well, it did, and then dollar for dollar, the state took back every one of those that was supposed to increase funding for education. So the net result was no increase. The same thing is undoubtedly going to happen with this. There'll be more police hirings needed, more traffic accidents will be caused, and which will cause insurance rates to rise, just like they have done in every other area of the country that has allowed recreational marijuana. As such, I would ask you to consider joining Grundy, DuPage, Kendall, and Kankakee counties that have already opted out. We are very happy the public discussion and voting will now be going to take place on this issue, and we ask that you do please vote to opt out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Martha Corradetti.
Good morning. I'm Martha Corradetti, and I'm a resident of Will County, and I'm speaking on behalf of our children and our teenagers in Will County. I agree with many health officials who are concerned that the trend toward legalizing marijuana for recreational use sends the wrong message to those who are most vulnerable to its effects, children whose bodies and minds are still developing. Even in states where recreational use of marijuana has been legalized by voter referendum, its use is legal only for adults over age 21. Nowhere is smoking marijuana legal for children or considered safe for use by youth, but that's not always the message they are getting. Initially, the message teens were receiving was, if it's medicine, it must be okay. More recently, the message is, if it's legal, it must be safe. The National Institute for Drug Abuse's annual Monitoring the Future survey shows that teens' perception of marijuana's harmfulness has gradually decreased over the years, which usually signals future increases in use among youth. As more and more states make both medical and recreational marijuana use legal, teen perception of the harm it can cause is diminished. We are not sending a good message when we legalize it. For the sake of our children, I strongly oppose recreational cannabis dispensaries in Will County. I appreciate the opportunity to express my opinion.
Thank you. Next up, we have Nikki Serbin.
Good afternoon. My name is Nikki Serbin. I'm from Joliet, and I'm speaking today because I believe in facts over fear. Cannabis has never killed anyone. Now, there's been black market vape products that have killed people due to a vitamin C acetate mixer that was put into those black market vape carts. Alcohol is not any more dangerous and actually demonstrably less or more harmful. Alcohol consumption is not only permitted, but often celebrated. Wine mixers with our friends, margarita parties. Very rarely, we watch a pro football game. We let our kids watch the Super Bowl. There's beer commercials, beer commercials, beer commercials. So I'm having a hard time buying into we're sending a bad message. So obviously, we would ban a lot more than just cannabis. People opposed to cannabis have rarely ever tried it. And the fact of the matter is, 1 in 5 people that try it don't actually enjoy it. Just like many people that consume alcohol don't enjoy it. So the concept that somebody tries it and is immediately addicted is ludicrous. There's a lot of different types of cannabis that elicits a lot of different types of effects, similar to the intoxicants of wine versus whiskey. You would not say that those intoxicants are the same, and they do not create similar effects. When you remember that an intoxicating effect of cannabis is less dangerous and more relaxing, it's hard to prove that it's a public health crisis. States that have legalized cannabis have seen a 25% reduction in opioid overdoses. Not only does cannabis provide an excellent alternative to opioids, but it minimizes dope sickness, which is the hardest part often of people coming off opioids or heroin. States that have legalized cannabis have actually seen a reduction in teen use. There's loads of examples and statistics for that in Colorado, California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, and even throughout Canada. The cannabis plant comes in various forms and works as an anticonvulsant, an antipsychotic, an antioxidant, an antidepressant, an anti-inflammatory, and anti-nausea drug. It fights cancer, Alzheimer's, long-term pain issues, HIV, rheumatoid arthritis, hepatitis C, gout, shingles, psoriasis, migraines, Dravet syndromes, autism, traumatic brain injury, headaches, lupus, high blood pressure, Parkinson's, blood sugar issues, Crohn's, MS, PTSD, Tourette's, and glaucoma. It also can provide paper products, textiles, molded plastic, construction materials, food, fuel, and pet medication. So the idea that this is a public health crisis, again, is ludicrous. Our endocannabinoid system that we have in our body is involved in the regulating of a various form of different effects, from appetite, pain management, immune systems, memory, mood, and pleasure sensations. Cannabis is the natural medicine to balance your endocannabinoid system. Does that sound like a dangerous illicit drug? During the 20s and 30s, during the Mexican Revolution, Mexican immigration spiked in the U.S. Although cannabis was in loads of American tinctures prior to that, Mexican immigrants and Native Americans showed people how to smoke cannabis, and reefer madness began. Part of Henry Aslinger's strategy, who was the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics at that time, his option was to rename cannabis marijuana in the effects to make it sound like a Mexican dangerous devil weed, which it is not. It should not be associated with those things, and it was intended to stoke white Americans' racist fears. The war on drugs began according to a Nixon aide, because the Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies: the anti-war left and black people. We, quote, "We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana, the blacks with heroin, and criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about drugs? Of course we did." That's a quote from Nixon's aide, the gentleman that helped craft the war on drugs. Prohibition is built on lies, racial fear, and ignorance. That's why the war on drugs saw people of color incarcerated at 5 times the rate of white folks for the same crime. The DARE program was a failure. We talk about kids being introduced. What it successfully did was introduce drugs to kids. And actually, kids that took DARE were more likely to use drugs at an earlier age because it increased the curiosity, because the drugs that were introduced to them by police officers that they trusted. Cannabis legalization has led to a reduction in violent crimes. It has created additional tax revenue. In the state of California, in the initial year of legalization, Colorado generated $1 billion in tax revenue. It also generated $77 billion in tourism revenue. Cannabis can kill you in the following ways. You could choke to death while you shove a handful of it in your mouth. A heavy crate of cannabis can fall on you and paralyze you and kill you. A serial killer's name could be cannabis. Cannabis can kill you in the following ways: smoking it, vaping it, eating it. You can have a negative experience by over-consuming an edible, but it will not kill you. 1 in 10 Americans consume cannabis regardless. By opting out, you are simply opting out of revenue. Nothing more than that. More than half of Americans have used cannabis, tried it more than once. 33 million people regularly use it. Again, 1 in 10 Americans. Public support of legalization is at 60%. So while there's a handful of people that live in fear and ignorance, that is not the fact. The fact is that, unlike any other thing, alcohol and other intoxicants, cannabis has no physiological effects of addiction. While cannabis can be abused, the reality is about 4% of people are prone to addiction regardless, let that be alcohol, cigarettes, food, gambling, or different medications, including illicit drugs. But the reality is, those that over-medicate are prone to over-medicate regardless. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Have a lovely day.
The next up is Donna Fisher.
She needs some decaf coffee. 90 miles an hour.
Trying to keep that.
Hello. My name is Donna Fisher. I'm a resident of New Lenox. I am here because I am 100% in favor of a dispensary for you guys to opt in. I would love that. It's a better alternative than what's on the street. Cannabis saved my life. I was disabled on my couch, unable to move for 3 years. And my children, age 16 and 19, told me about the cannabis pilot program. This was years ago. And I started that. My daughter took me to the library. She printed out all my papers to get my card. And I got my card, and here I am. I'm able to move. I'm fine now. Some people are unable to get their medical cards. People with anxiety and depression. That's a good reason to get, to open a recreational dispensary. Cannabis can be used to control the abuse of more harmful drugs. I'm living proof that cannabis does help. Thank you.
That was all the public. Those are all the people signed up to speak from the public. Are there board members wishing to speak? Jim?
Right now, I'm not going to talk, necessarily talk about whether we should stay in or whether we should opt out, but I do think that the board, this should be moved to the full board for a board discussion and a board vote to opt out. I'm personally not in favor. The issue does become a little bit more complex, as I found out at the Land Use Committee, because there's only so many licenses that are going to be issued, and we don't even know how many licenses are going to come to Will County. But as a general rule, I think that we as a county should be in sync with our local communities and not necessarily be really out of sync with our municipalities. What I'm concerned is that we could have people that are setting up shop right along municipal boundaries, and they've opted out. But then I couldn't have found out land use. Well, there may only be 4 licenses for all of Will County. We don't even know if there'll be any licenses available for unincorporated Will County. I'd like to see if we can get that a little bit more down what they think we're going to be. They were uncertain, but at the end of the day, I just think it should be a board decision. The board should have a discussion and vote on it. And however that vote turns out, how's it turns out. But I do think that it should be a board decision. We should have the opportunity to discuss, to opt out. So that's, and I will later, maybe I'll wait, Denise, until this discussion is completed, but I would make a motion to move the opt-out to the full county board at some point here. So, but I'll just wait.
Thank you. Meta, followed by Ray.
I just wanted to state to everyone that the way that I see this right now is that I understand that we have community members who are concerned about kids and their use, and as things stand right now with cannabis, it's unregulated. We have zero control over where it's sold and how kids get it, or if they get it, or any of that. If we give up an opportunity to regulate this right now in this, vote or whatever, we're giving up an opportunity to protect our children. So that's what I want to say about that, and I'm going to be an opt-in. I'm happy to tell you all.
I do agree we need to bring this to the board for a full vote. If for anything, it's for our land use department. I think our land use department is kind of in flux right now, and you could probably ask any one of the members back there. They're running around scrambling, trying to figure this all out. We should give them a vote at the November meeting, and if we opt in, they continue to go down the same path. But if we opt out, why continue to make them go through 2 months of hearings and all the things that they have to put together to make this work? I spoke endlessly at the meeting for land use regarding boundaries, critical zones that the state has allowed us to protect the children. Because in our districts, obviously you got the four high schools in District 2 and District 4, followed by within 1,200 or 1,250 feet or 2,500 feet, you have areas that would be deemed okay to sell it. So there are some things we could do moving forward, but I think a full opt-out vote would be the best thing to do at this meeting, and let's provide some direction to staff. I've had them looking up a couple things of legalities of what we can and can't do. The state's attorney's looking up a couple things. But why make them go through all that work if we're going to opt out? If we're going to stay in, then we continue down that path. I would strongly suggest we bring it to a vote.
Thank you. No, okay. That's it. Other board members wishing to speak?
Jim?
Just a minute. Jim?
I'd like to make a motion to move the issue of the cannabis issue to the full county board for a discussion or for a vote to vote either in or out. And I'll make that motion.
That's for discussion, right, Jim?
Yeah.
Oh, they got to wait for a second here.
Second? Okay. Moved by Mr. Moostis, second by Mr. Brooks, to move the discussion of cannabis in or out. Obviously, it would be for out, since we are already automatically in,
Yeah.
to the full board on recreational marijuana. All those in favor?
I have a question.
Question.
But it's going to the full board, and we have some public hearings scheduled. Would those continue, or would those need to be?
Public hearings would continue.
Public hearings will continue, and I'll just clarify, because I had a cheat sheet on when things were coming up, and I mixed the dates up on that. But PZC has a public hearing on, it is
The 19th.
the 19th of December. I gave you the wrong date on that, which is being... November 19th.
For the
I'm mixed up
zoning.
again. PZC has a public hearing on zoning and for cannabis on November 19th. That has to happen before public land use here could make the motion on zoning. So that's on the zoning piece. On December 5th would be the finance piece on the tax. That can happen independent of zoning or opt-out. So there are three pieces: the zoning, the tax, and the opt-out. Those are the three pieces. So the offer now is to move the opt-out piece to the full board on the 19th of November. Still in discussion.
Oh, sorry. You're right.
The only thing I was thinking about is that I think another thing for us to consider is to put it as a referendum to the voters. The residents of Illinois did not have an opportunity to vote on it one way or the other because it was passed by the state legislature. Perhaps it would be a good idea if we gave our residents in Will County the opportunity to vote whether they would like to have recreational marijuana sold in Will County.
Thank you.
I think it should be another part of the conversation.
Okay. Other comments? We are in the discussion. We have a motion and a second. We are in the discussion. Others? Ms. Trenier?
I'm going to be a no on moving it to the full board because we're in and I'm happy with that position, so.
Okay. Others?
Just to be clear, no matter if we opt in or stay in or opt out, we still need to continue on the path of the zoning.
Right.
Because there will need to be a zoning change
We need to have
made
some
either
regulation. We
way.
have to do that regardless. We have to
Yeah.
do zoning regardless, and we need to do the taxation regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are three distinct pieces. Other comments? The motion before you is to move the discussion on opt-out to the full board on November 19th. All those in favor? Opposed? 21st,
Yes.
okay. Was that your comment, Mr. Markham? Okay, do you have another comment? Go ahead. Okay.
you wanna take a
So
roll
we have
call?
it. Okay, so we'll do the roll call. So the motion then is to move the opt-out to the November 21st full board meeting. So your yes would be to move it.
Barry?
No.
Brooks. Harris.
No.
Markham.
No.
Mustis.
Yes.
Ogala.
Yes.
Trainier. Van Dyne.
Yes.
And Winfrey.
Yes.
Five, four. 5-4. Motion has been approved.
The motion passes. On the 21st, the full board meeting, there will be further discussion and the vote on opt-out. And
Everyone knows the time for the PZC is at 6:30 PM on the 19th, November
on the
19th. in
On November
this room.
19th, right. And that would be with respect to the zoning.
Yes.
And that will happen prior to land use of this committee being able to have a final vote. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Okay, yeah. Moving into, did you have something else? No? Moving into the new business, we have renewal of professional services contract Baxter and Woodman for land use. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Renewal of consulting agreement with MAC Communications.
Second.
All those in favor? For the next two, our lobbyists, we wanted to do a further look at the performance and needs on those two, so I'm going to ask that we take the Curry and Associates removed and also the Smith Dawson removed.
You got a table or remove it?
Table.
Table till, okay, table till the,
Second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. All right. Okay, so moving then on to number 6 is the renewal of professional services contract with Lois Mayer.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Renewal of a contract for CED. All in favor? Questions? Question, Judy?
I think that since our state legislative agenda has not contained the Ileana or the South Suburban Airport for the last, I don't know, 3-4 years possibly, that should be removed from this unless we make a change for going forward.
Removed from what?
It should be removed from the CED's contract.
it's in there.
Oh,
It's in there?
right. I knew
I
what you
don't know
mean,
which
but it's
paragraph
on
it
their
is, but
contract.
it's like the 1, 2, it's the second, and the second whereas.
South Suburban.
Okay. Mr. Palmer, did you have a comment?
I can look at the language, and we can work with John to remove that. I don't have it in front of me, but I know what you're talking about. The only thing I would just advise the board is we can remove it from our contract with CED, which is what, Judy, I think you're asking for, but the CED can take a position that's contrary, obviously, and we know that from what the county's position is, which the county basically just has a neutral position. We're not actively opposed, we're not actively supporting either of those projects officially. I mean, it's not in our state or federal agendas anymore, but CED has I believe, their position is still formally supporting, so we're just one of many members on that CED board, so because not all of you obviously attend CED functions, or, I mean, we have a board rep, and the county executive's office attends their board meetings and executive committees, so.
Yeah, I know that what you're saying there, Nick, and my thought is that, and I've said this before in other issues, is with the state legislative agenda and the federal legislative agenda, that when we have a more narrow scope of what we really are focusing on, it helps us get those projects going forward, because we're not listing a wish list. I know some people didn't like the word wish list, but we don't have a whole list of things that we're looking to do. We're looking at the things that are very important to us, that make a lot of sense, and the community-friendly freight mobility plan, that makes sense. We've got residents screaming all over about truck traffic. the tax abatement property program with the Joliet Arsenal. I know that people are very interested in that. They totally appreciate the work that's been done at Medewin. And the I-355, I'm not sure what the extension means. I don't even know what that is. I think that's an
Old language.
That's old language that needs to be removed as well. But I think, too, like with the I-80, I know that we've done on the I-80 and Weber, we've made those focus points. And I think that that's more important to put focus points out there. And if we remove the South Suburban Airport and the Atlanta, it makes us have that conversation. We can't just say, we're just going to remain quiet until somebody else makes a decision. This is our county. It's our residents, it's our land, it's their land, the residents' land, and we need to take charge of that. We shouldn't allow others to take charge or make plans for our areas without us agreeing that that is what we want to do. And if we had the conversation, everyone thinks the airport should be built, and I don't, well, then that's at least the conversation that we've had. We don't have this conversation.
So you're looking to remove that language from the resolution only?
Correct.
Okay, and then Nick, you'll-
Maybe I would just suggest, John Grueling had to leave for another meeting, but I can work with him and we can try to amend that language and get it to the caucuses before they meet, so you'll have a chance to see it before the board meeting. But if we can, I think we'd like to keep this contract moving forward. If we can make agreeable changes that suffice, and obviously, if need be, I could even come, or have John come to the caucus meetings if we need to, just so that it's sufficient.
Clear the resolution, okay? Okay. Thank you, Nick. Jackie?
Madam Chair, I apologize. I was getting messages and neglected to make a comment when we were voting on both number 4, the Curry Associates contract, and number 5, the Smith-Dawson contract.
We tabled those two.
Oh, see, I told you I was distracted. Thank you. That's what I wanted to do, because I really would like to sit down with leadership and talk about what our expectations are. So, thank you.
And that's the purpose of the table, Mr. Moody.
Thank you.
To the CED, Nick, I think that maybe we need to have have the board have a better understanding of our relationship.
How much control?
The CED does very specific things for the county, I'll say as a consultant. And they also take their own positions. Some we may agree with, some we may not agree with. But primarily, the CED, I'll take, for example, infrastructure. The CED's not doing that on our behalf. They're doing that on their entire membership and regional behalf, right? I mean, and I do think that what should really be in the resolution and the contract is specifically what they do for us. For example, they may make contacts for us. They help promote economic development. We may be supporting some municipal development. The reason the airport was on there, at one time, they were our primary kind of spokesman for the airport many, many years ago. So they no longer do that. So, Nick, I'm thinking if we have time, see what else is in there that maybe would make sense to more define exactly, specifically what they do for us. They do our abatement program, the abatements come through them, and so forth. And that's been a big value to us, and it saves us a lot of staff time. So I don't know if there's other ways, Nick, or other things you might look at to refine it a little bit, but people should have an understanding, just because we may agree on something doesn't mean they're doing it on our behalf. They're doing it on their membership behalf. And it's because we oppose something, they may be supporting it. So I guess I think it's this time maybe you take a harder look at it, that's all.
And I'll just keep this short here, because this could be a much longer conversation. CED, and we do participate, the Executive's Office and County Board Office, in a number of subcommittees there. They are kind of revamping the way even they function internally, from just meetings where you have John Grueling as the head speaking to the group as having more active membership participation, but they're looking at things like quality of life, basically like live here, work here, play here, so kind of like a tourism more focus. They have participated in the freight on the workforce side. But and frankly, there's things that they're not doing that we're doing internally here on the tourism side. We've done some things we've brought to the previous subcommittee on promoting Route 66 and things, which is something that CED really doesn't do because they are a membership organization. They have to promote themselves to retain their membership and the value to their members who are paying to be members, versus we may do some things that are just promoting Will County generally in our community. So like we've worked with the Heritage Convention or Corridor Convention Visitors Bureau, Bob Navarro's group, to promote Will County just generally because, and we've talked about the economic impact of that, but I think this would be a good discussion to have apart. I mean, we're passing the contract, but I think we can still get the corrections that are suggested and still have that conversation after this passage, because there could be other projects that CED comes to us and asks us to participate in, whether we choose to or not, which mean additional dollars. We may say no, we may say yes, it depends, but anyway, there's a lot more there than just what we're talking about, and this contract is kind of high level. It's not in the weeds too far, so, but.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so then that one goes forward as is with the, whatever editing happens to the language, and we'll go to the caucuses prior to next Thursday. Okay, so then we have the award of bid for elevator maintenance at the various Will County office buildings. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We have award of bid for the sale of surplus vehicles. Any opposed? Motion carries. Declaring various equipment surplus and authorizing disposal. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Authorizing renewal of contract with Trezino Concrete for snow removal services at the Public Safety Complex, sorry.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have the award of bid for gasoline and diesel fuel. We only had one bid on that, although that one bid is lower than what we have had previously. So it is still a great deal for us. Any opposed? Motion carries. Appropriating funds for the payment of the county engineer's salary.
Second.
Any opposed? Or all in favor, I'm sorry. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Amending the resolution that authorizes the state's attorney's office to proceed with condemnation of cases regarding improvements along Laraway Road from Stonebridge to, correct, this was a Scrivener's error in the list of the properties. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Extension of the term of the Board of Review.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. IGA with PACE for continuation of service provider for the mobility management program. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. IGA with CREAT for the mobility management program. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. IGA with Frankfurt for the mobility management program.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. IGA with Moni for the mobility management program. All in favor? Any opposed? IGA with Washington Township for the mobility management program.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. IGA with Will Township for the mobility management program.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead.
I just want to make a quick comment. All these mobility intergovernmental agreements we're doing help supply local transportation. It is, we pretty much have operated off that grant from the RTA. That's why I mentioned it today with the RTA here. Hopefully, we could get some increase in that. But moving forward, I like to say in next year's budget, we have not put any revenue in from our corporate funds for this. And in the next budget cycle, I would hope that we can, absence of the RTA increasing that grant, I'd like to maybe have us consider in the 21 budget year, we maybe start funding some of this a little bit to keep this program going. We got a little foothold here, and we need to try to continue to keep it going. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks, Denise.
Thank you. I'm adding one, IGA with Peatone Township for the mobility management project.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then we're authorizing an agreement with Strand Associates for solar feasibility study.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then DCEO grant with the National Dislocated Worker Grant Program for the opioid disaster recovery project.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, repeal of ordinance 1030, which amends condition 15 on the citing ordinance 9972 for the Prairie View Recycling and Disposal Facility to approve a proposal submitted by Waste Management of Illinois with certain conditions pertaining to condition 15, say that 16 times fast, of citing ordinance 9972.
Second.
Any opposed? Or all in favor? Question about that?
I'm just, so exactly what is this? I guess I'm just not sure
Yeah.
what we're doing here. Yeah, I'm thinking, okay,
Yeah.
this almost,
And the language is very round and around, but Mary can clarify for you.
No, so this will just be a resolution coming forward. For those of you who have been on the board for a while, you'll recall about 10 years ago, we passed a resolution amending the citing ordinance for waste management at the landfill that allowed them to recirculate the leachate. And leachate is basically the liquid in the landfill that causes the garbage to decompose more rapidly and produce more methane gas, which we wanted to happen for our generators to generate electricity. However, we have not added more generators, and we are looking at the gas-to-energy plant, so we actually want to save the gas, the potential for the gas, so we want to stop recirculating the leachate so the garbage does not decompose as rapidly, and then we have the potential for more gas once we get the gas-to-energy plant up and running. So that is the reasoning behind this.
of the leachate.
It would require them to stop recirculating the leachate.
Okay,
Correct.
got it. Oh, I'm all for that.
Any other questions? Okay, so, did I have a motion and a second? I had a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Authorizing a lease agreement with Frankfurt Township for the Branch Court Facility.
Did you want to mention anything
Second.
on that?
Is this a new one?
She's got a couple.
I thought we already were using township, so that
Yeah, this is, so the chief judge has decided to consolidate the branch courts, so they will be eliminating 3 branch courts in Peatone, Lockport, and Braidwood. They will retain the branch courts in Plainfield, Bolingbrook, Frankfurt, and Wilmington, but because of the consolidation, they will need an extra day at Frankfurt. So we are, it will be essentially the same lease we've always used. There were some issues about security that we're working out. But it's going to essentially be the same lease that you've always seen. Okay.
Other questions? Yep, okay. So, motion to,
Motion in a second.
we do have the motion in a second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. The next is transferring funds within the Health Department fiscal 19 budget for the Will County Community Health Center.
Second.
All in favor?
Question.
Question?
Yeah, I noticed that there's some unfilled positions for the health center. How are we doing with staffing? Are we behind on work, or are we okay, or?
Sue? Sue, would you use the microphone or sit at a desk, one of them, so that everybody can hear?
Yeah. You're on. Okay, thank you. The positions, the bulk of the positions that we're having trouble filling have to do with our community health center, specifically. Provider salaries are low. We've been working with a compensation committee of the Board of Health to come up with a plan to take care of that. And we do have some goals, and we have some recommendations for them for our meeting next week.
We don't pay enough.
So that should help with the providers. The other are support staff like CMAs, LPNs, nurses. Again, we have difficulty filling those positions because of the way we have to compete with the large conglomerates, Advocates, Amidas, those sorts of things. So, we have great benefits, but people don't care about benefits anymore. They don't care about a 10-year pension plan because they're not going to be around for 10 years. Young people move from place to place to place. You're lucky if you have them for 2 or 3 years. So the whole hiring, the whole recruitment, it's really shifting. And it's a whole different story. So we're having to work through some of those things.
Jackie?
If I could ask, I don't know that you know this off the top of your head, you probably weren't prepared for the question, but what are our provider salaries? Just ballpark?
Well, it depends on the specialty. We have everything from maybe a family practice or a nurse practitioner, let's say, a nurse practitioner making $98,000 to a OB/GYN doc with experience delivering babies making $250,000.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was just looking at some jobs, federal jobs online. I think it was a VA hospital, and it was an OB they were looking for, and the starting salary was $250.
Yeah.
So I can see how, and the government has horrible benefits at the federal level. You guys got Cadillac.
We have great benefits, and I love our benefits, but, not everybody feels the same way anymore.
No, and you're right, they do shift around. People, I was somewhere yesterday, I mean, people don't stay anywhere anymore. Thank you.
Other questions for Sue? Nope. Okay, thank you. I believe we have a motion and a second. Do we? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Then we have replacement hires for the Division of Transportation for the road maintainers, which is coming right up. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Replacement hires for 911.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Then we have replacement hire for Human Resources, HR Specialist.
Motion.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, and I believe we have a couple of proclamations, or at least one anyway.
If you want, recognizing Mike Hennessy on 30 years with United Way. Hopefully, he will be able to be here this month. I know we've had him on for a couple of months.
Right.
And then recognizing the 100th anniversary of Zonta International.
Right, okay. All righty. Okay. Then we have...
Just wanted to make a note on Mike Hennessy. They have a program called the Community Baby Shower, where they help provide diapers to low-income parents that are trying to keep their children in daycare. Even if you have a subsidized daycare program, you bring your child there, you don't have the 25 diapers, they will send your child home. You must have 25 diapers every Monday morning when you come in, and it's a problem for a lot of families in Will County. And recently, actually I think it was Tuesday, they were awarded a gift from the members of 100 Women Who Care, and they're going to get about $4,000 to help with that program. United Way does a lot of interesting things that we don't always know about, and the Community Baby Shower was one of them. So I'm excited that we're doing this proclamation, and hopefully, like you said, Mike will be here. Beth Rice had asked, and I thought something was said in a board meeting that we were going to get language on the proclamations and know what they were ahead of time. I know she's not here, but I know this has been an issue for her because I sit next to her. And I'm just wondering if that is going to change or if we're still going to continue with just the word proclamation.
The issue is that we don't know what proclamations are going forward until today, and our focus, once you set the agenda, is to get all the resolutions included. We usually don't even worry about writing the proclamations until next week because they are just presented. So we'll have to talk about how we can work it to get them out to everybody, before, so.
Yeah. Maybe this may not be what her focus is. Maybe, I'm assuming that what she's wanting to understand is why people are being given the proclamation or what's behind that. And so we can possibly, as soon as we know what the group is, provide a little bit of information about
A synopsis or something.
of that person. So like in this case, it's Mike Hennessy, United Way, 30 years. Zonta, people pretty much know that. So maybe that is, if she's looking to understand who the group is and why they're getting a proclamation, we can maybe send that information out to everybody, attach it to the agenda.
Yeah, if it's just on the agenda, I'm sure that'd be fine.
And then, part of some of the times, we could get a proclamation request yesterday for this month, depending on what the schedule is.
Yeah,
So-
I think she was just looking for it to be there on the agenda a day or so before the meeting.
For the county board
For the
meeting?
county board meeting.
Okay.
And I know the agenda has to be published 48 hours prior.
Right.
So I'm assuming at that 48-hour mark, you know what the proclamation's going to be?
We know who it's for. We might not have all the details of what's written in the proclamation. That's the issue. We're still gathering information sometimes Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday of next week.
Is there a rule that we can't put the language on there on like Wednesday before, or?
We could do that.
Yeah, we can save the
day
space.
before, yes. We could add it to the county board agenda for, the Wednesday, the day before the meeting, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so what we'd do is, earlier on, you'd have the name already, you'd know who's going to get a proclamation, and then as soon as we have the background, we'd publish the revised agenda, which adds the language.
We can do that.
Or we give board members, I should say, not publish, because we're not going to be able to do that, but we would add a revised agenda to your tablets that has the information on the proclamation.
Right.
Okay? Okay. So we have the,
Proclamations are set.
okay, and then we have the, let's see, the appointments are in your packets.
Right, you have to vote on those. We need a motion.
Okay.
Second for that one.
Okay, so.
The regular.
So the 2019 appointments to boards and commissions. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Nick?
We may want to just call out specific attention, because the process, usually we submit the appointments a month in advance. Last month, we took action to declare a vacancy in District 1.
That's the next one up.
But I mean, I just want to make
That's
sure.
next.
Okay.
That's the
sorry.
next one up. Yeah.
I just don't want to make sure we're not getting in Robert's rules.
Not mixing them together.
problems. Okay.
That's separate, yeah. So then the next one up then, that was appointments to boards and commissions. The next up is the appointment for the District 1 seat. And so the county executive has notified me that he has a name that he will put forward. That name is Sherry Newquist, so that will be on the agenda on the 21st. We would seat that person on November 21st, so we need a motion for that.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so she will be seated at the November 21st board meeting. Okay. Let's see, we didn't have any requests for state's attorney's opinion that I'm aware of.
No.
Okay, so then we have land use and development.
Your zoning
Would you-
cases, any issues on those?
Hearing next week.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, finance.
No issues.
The budget.
Business as usual.
With the budget coming?
The budget's coming up for vote, so hopefully everybody's there to vote on it.
Okay,
Other than that, no other issues.
okay. Public Works and Transportation.
I believe all the resolutions were unanimous, so nothing there.
Okay, thank you. Judicial. Yeah, that was canceled, that's right. Public health and safety, they didn't, that's right, they didn't. Legislative and policy, anything coming forward?
No.
Okay. Capital improvements? Okay. And then you've just heard the executive committee. Is there any additional public comment? See, if you wait long enough, you can get rid of everybody. Okay, I have nothing additional to report. I don't believe that we need an executive session now. We will need on next Thursday, I believe. There will be an executive session then, but not today. Approval of the board.
Committee of the Whole today on the airport?
No. No, that was canceled.
Oh.
It was canceled, but it didn't come off the calendar.
Yeah, because I was going to have to leave.
She did. It didn't show red. It should have shown red beside it, cancellation.
No, it doesn't.
So, well, at any rate, we are not having committee of the whole on the airport today. So what we do have in front of us now is the approval of the board agenda.
As amended.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. All those in favor, okay. So then we have, motion passes.
Yes.
So then we have the adjournment.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?